Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch for Comics Get Counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 144. We're talking Terra from the Teen Titans as selected by Ariel, who is sticking with her Titans kick for a while. At least it's something different than the Bat family, although I'm sure she'll get back to that at some point. So we're going to jump right into it. And I want to note, and we'll get into this in the background, there are technically three different Terras. So the first Terra, the original OG Terra, was created by Marv, Wolfman, and George Perez in New Teen Titans number 26, December 1982. Side note, the news that George Perez has stage 4 cancer, and he's been given, I think he said, like 6 to 12 months to live. And it's just an absolute shame because not only is he an absolute legend in the industry, just a really great guy. I can't say I've ever had the opportunity to meet him, but every creator that I have met, and I follow numerous creators on social media, both individually and through the Capes account, speak very highly of him as a person, his work ethic. I mean, again, obviously his work speaks for itself. I mean, between the Teen Titans and then the work he did for Marvel and Marvel versus DC and all that. And so, I mean, he's just an absolute icon. And so hopefully, I know he's basically blind at this point and he's no longer doing any more commissions, but there's going to be, I think, a good amount of anthologizing of his career, you know, as we approach sort of his final year-ish on Earth. And so I would encourage everybody to go out there and find as much George Perez work as you can, because the man could just draw the shit out of absolutely everything and everybody. He made every character look stellar and fantastic. So Terra Markov is the illegitimate child of Viktor Markov, who is the king of Markovia, one of those many, many small Eastern European nations created, you know, so that they can do all that stuff and tell all the stories they want to tell in comics without actually having to name a specific country. So she was experimented on as a child and gained the ability to control earth and matter. Unlike her brother Geo-Force, who has very similar powers but is heroic, she believed her abilities essentially made her a god, and that she was meant to rule over people. And it's the whole malignant narcissism and things of that nature. So this mindset, coupled with the scandal of her parentage, led her father to send her out of the country to the United States. Lucky us. So she used her powers to work as a mercenary, and she eventually gained the attention of Deathstroke, who took her under his wing and made her a young protege of his. And he used her to infiltrate the Teen Titans, even going so far as to battle him to earn their trust. And this all culminates then in one of the most famous Teen Titans stories, the Judas Contract, because at this point, Terra had been a member of the team for about 2 years. So after Deathstroke captured the Titans using the information that she had fed him, it's revealed that she's been working as a double agent this entire time. And his son Jericho possessed Slade to free the Titans. Terra was not aware of Jericho's powers. She thinks Slade turns on her. And this, coupled with Beast Boy, or Changeling as he was known at the time, kind of turned into a fly, and he flew in her face to distract her and piss her off. So she pulls down the entire building in a fit of rage in an effort to kill everybody. And she dies herself. Basically everybody else, a couple agents of Hive, and, you know, there were some additional casualties, but all the big name Titans and everybody and Slade survived the ordeal, but she's dead. So she returns as a Black Lantern during Blackest Night, because they use the power of the Black Rings to reanimate countless characters, heroes and villains alike. And she tries to seduce Beast Boy. I think she may have actually done it. It's been a while since I've read it. And she lies to her brother, Geo-Force, and several of the heroes, saying, "Oh no, I'm being manipulated. I need you to kill me because I don't want to be reanimated. This was all a ruse." And she ends up battling her brother, and he ends up turning her to stone. So that's much, much later. In the interim, after she dies, a doppelganger appears, same power set, looks exactly like Terra, shows up, tries to reintegrate herself into the Titans. Turns out, we later find out that she was an alien who was sent to Earth and genetically manipulated to appear as the reincarnation of Terra. But the process erased her memory. We're not really going to touch on the doppelganger so much. And then about 15 or so years ago, a new Terra named Atlee shows up in the New 52 as an ally of Supergirl and later Power Girl. So she's a completely separate character. She's not Terra. She's much more heroic, although she's kind of blunt about it. So she's got a little bit of an edge to her, but she's not quite, she's a separate character, and she doesn't have all the same issues that Terra has. So we're going to get into the issues, and the theme for Terra is manipulation. It's not just her power set. It's many of the things that happen to her. But the first thing that Ariel suggests, and the thing that she wants to talk about, is in universe, it's stated many times that Terra is a sociopath, that she doesn't really engage well with people. She doesn't fully understand feelings, and that due to her power set, and again, everything that happened to her, she views herself above mere mortals. And so Ariel's question is how her sociopathy relates to actual antisocial personality disorder. And so this is, something that where we do this on occasion in the show, is say this character is said to have X disorder, but what is it really, and what would they legitimately look like if they had this? So this gives us an opportunity to kind of talk about that a little bit. So, Doc?
Okay, so I'm actually going to add a third term to this. So not just sociopath, not just antisocial personality, I'll add psychopath, because all three of these things are terms that are commonly used in our regular vocabulary. And this is actually something that is pretty controversial, because I would say if you were to use any one of them, you're really not going to get pushback anywhere in the mental health community. But there are some people that dedicate their lives to this, and there are people that point out there are some differences. So first, I'm going to put on my psychiatrist hat, meaning trained MD, and therefore my construct is through the DSM, which means that everything that I learned is directly from the diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. I'm not going to just automatically list all of the characteristics, because I appreciate the fact that our fans are able to process that type of information and can look that up regularly, and we've done other episodes on that. Having said that, splitting out sociopath and psychopath, if it's possible, just look at what the parts of path are, because path, the whole point of that is disease. Sociopath refers to interactions with others. Psychopath indicates the actual internal struggle the person is having in their own mindset. So what that's getting at is when Terra is having a horrible reaction to what she perceives is happening with Slade, mistreating her and double-crossing a double-cross, her deciding to bring the entire building down, that's way above and beyond what anybody would expect. And her acting out and therefore impacting everybody else, that's the sociopath part. That's the part where your interactions are bad and causing lots of damage. The idea, though, that even before that, based on how things have been going for her, and her knowing that despite the fact that, heaven forbid, she actually created close connections with people that she was working with for the matter of a couple of years, and still is willing to hold on to this other idea for someone for the sake of causing a lot of destruction in the end, and her own mind saying, yeah, this is the way to go, because it's going to produce some sort of benefit for me, even if it does damage to everybody else. That thought is where you could say she's quote unquote a psychopath. So it's not necessarily that we have to get the wording absolutely right. It's just that we can use these terms to really map out what we are particularly focusing on at any given time. So just to summarize that, if I'm talking about
what's happening to everybody else and how much that's destroying things around them and or wrecking people's relationships or just doing things that society considers wrong and causing a lot of pain for those around them. Okay, we're talking sociopath. If we're talking about how the person is processing these things, saying, oh boy, what is going through that twisted mind of yours, et cetera, et cetera. And I apologize for the pejorative. I'm not saying that everybody thinks this way. I'm just pointing out that these are sometimes the words that people will colloquially use. But when you get into that realm of, wow, I can't even imagine thinking that way. That is so different than what I would expect a human being to be doing or saying, then we're talking psychopath. If we're talking about the idea that we're putting all of this together and saying we have enough of these examples, both from the person's stated experience, our observations of those behaviors, and everything gathered from other sources, then we could put it together and say it's antisocial personality disorder. Now, that is how I process this stuff. Once again, I know that there are other ways that it can be done. And I'm not pretending that I am the be-all, end-all when it comes to this. And I always appreciate these types of discussions. And I'm always going to say that it's a very, very difficult situation to deal with no matter what. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation where I think one of the things that we tend to focus on as individuals and also collectively as a society is the reactions that these people have to inciting incidents, whatever they may be. And that's for obvious reasons. We can't know what's inside people's heads, but we tend to focus on the reactions that they have, like Terra trying to bring the building down, or, someone, whether they be a psychopath or a sociopath, whatever. We focus on the reactions that they have, and we don't always view the inciting incident, or we don't take the time to look at what may have triggered that. And that's frankly, for practical purposes, we can't know what's going on through everybody's mind at any given time. But when it's a situation like this, where the backstory is so integral to what led to it, then I think it's important for the professionals like you and maybe those working closely in proximity and those with close relationships to the individual to at least try and parse out a little bit more of that information and maybe see, okay, what led to this and how to either reduce the possibility for, triggering incidents in the future, or at least being aware of those triggers and being able to say, okay, this is going to set this person off. Let's try and deflect or mitigate that to some respect. But again, that's, I'm just kind of spitballing as a non-professional here, but I think that's important to be aware of, that these kinds of things typically don't happen in a vacuum. So we have to be mindful of what led to that. And, the expression goes, everybody is going through a struggle you don't see. It's just unfortunate that some people's struggles are deeper and potentially more destructive, both internally and externally, than others. And I think Terra is a clear example of that. So the second issue is the rejection by her father because of the nature of her parentage. Now, this is something we've discussed with a handful of characters, but it's very much the sins of the father. And I think it's incredibly hypocritical for the father to sire the illegitimate child and then turn around and reject her because she's not a legitimate child. You are the one who chose to go out and have this extramarital relationship. And now you can't, and now you're turning around and rejecting it because it's because of the optics. I just think that that's, incredibly hypocritical. And obviously we see this countless times, whether with royalty or even just political or just cultural. But the notion of rejection and paying a price for something that you had no part in whatsoever, it's a trite saying, but she didn't ask to be born. She certainly didn't ask to be born as a byproduct of her father cheating, and that can apply to, sexual assault or any number of things. So that's a heavy burden to bear for her as well.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you broadened it a bit at the end because I don't want to make this sound like this has anything to do with royalty. This is just about every common affair that happens where the person didn't want a child as a result. I hate to say it that way, but that's actually the bare truth of it. It's unfortunate that many people place a certain value on those who are currently in their lives versus those who potentially could be. And that's not just by birth. That's new interactions, new contacts, situations, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, as we have stated so many times, many people are comfortable with the known versus the unknown. And many people don't want to confront things that have led to unexpected circumstances or what they consider to be quote unquote mistakes. That doesn't necessarily mean that they view the child as a mistake, but depending on how it's worded, that is how the child could take it. And worse yet, I shouldn't excuse the idea that the person doesn't have that intention because unfortunately some parents do say that. And now you have the direct damage rather than the indirect damage. I hesitate to think of the situations that lead to even more abuse related to that. But all of it comes together, and unfortunately, there's no such thing as erasing what has happened. And yet, this type of treatment sometimes can be an attempt at undoing by the parents. And notice I'm saying parents because I understand that in this case, it's the father, and commonly it is the father, but it can also be the mother. It can also be other family members. Even if both parents accept the situation, that doesn't mean that anybody else is accepting the child in the family or the society, the culture, the neighborhood, whatever. It all is fair game in terms of who says yes, who says no. And we all have those individual decisions to make. And that can lead to some uncomfortable moments. And unfortunately, from what I've noticed, many people don't take into consideration the idea that no matter what decisions are made, the child is now going to be carrying, almost referencing Victor Zsasz, is going to be carrying these sets of tally marks of who has said what and just constantly doing it, even if unintentionally, as they progress through life. And I'm not saying that anybody is perfectly keeping score, but they're definitely keeping notice. And that's going to impact their emotional responses to the people involved. That's going to impact their views of modeling of what relationships can and should be. And that's going to model the range of emotional responses they're going to have when it comes to potential family interactions, intimacy, all sorts of things. You don't have or you may not, I should say, have the built-in role models for your behaviors and your expectations that you would otherwise if you had that parent in your life. So this really could fracture things from the start through no fault of the child. And from that standpoint, the question for us becomes, how much of a role do you want that person to be involved in the healing? Because there's also this idea that that person, because they did this wrong, it's like, well, they have to make it right. Well, how can they? Let's be honest. If there's a situation where they have their own, let's say, personality disorder, they have their own situation that is not ideal for that and may cause more harm depending on what they're going through in their life or how they decide to continue to experience things, that may not be the best path either. I'm not saying that if they don't, I'm not saying that if they want to be involved, they should be blocked, but it is something of consideration where, as we've discussed in other episodes, sometimes that parent decides to swoop in later to try to save the day from a situation and saying, well, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you then, I'm there for you now, or, other variations of that type of trope. And pardon the language here, I've actually been witness to this where, the person says, well, I'm not glad you're here, but I'm glad you came. It's just the unfortunate scenario where early on, the person decided that this book was not worthy of reading, and it pretty much gets lost to history. Meanwhile, the other person may have created the greatest novel ever told, and they're just not going to be around for it.
Yeah. I read a lot of forum posts and I read a lot of comments and things by people who have had difficult relations with their parents, difficult relationships with one or both of their parents. And it's really important, the thing that you said, that it's up to the child to decide whether or not the parent gets to be a part of that healing process. And that's not just a parent thing. I mean, we're talking about it within the framework and the scope of parentage, but that goes for anything, anybody. You get to decide the role that your abuser or the person who hurt you gets to play in your healing. And some people exhibit superhuman levels of grace, and they say, I want to bring them in so that they can understand, because I want them to know what their words and actions did to me, in the hopes that it will help them become a better person and create a greater level of understanding. Other people say, I don't have it in me to take the time and energy to walk them through it. You know, they hurt me. They have to change. It's not on me to change them. And both are equally valid. That's another thing. Both of those are perfectly valid and reasonable responses to have. Whether you choose to have your abuser in your life or not, that is your call to make. And so for somebody like Terra or again, anybody going through these types of situations, and we'll get into that a little bit in the out of universe, it's not an easy decision to make, but it's one that ultimately you have to make, because you have to be able to live with the ramifications of it. So I think it's very important that you brought that up, because it is incredibly true. And again, whether you do or you don't, you're right. So the last thing, and then again, this ties back into the manipulation, is she's manipulated by Deathstroke to be his pawn. Now, we obviously know that Slade is not exactly the best guy. We haven't done an episode on Slade yet. I'm sure we'll get around to it. Likely Ariel will pick him, going through her Bat Rogues gallery at some point. We'll get around to Slade. But we know Deathstroke is not a good dude. And he uses her, he abuses her, he has a relationship with her, and it's very much, I think, a situation where, and I'm hating to be quite so pejorative, but she's looking for that kind of a father figure. This, again, ties into the rejection of the father, because Slade is the older man. She's young at this point, and so he's taking advantage of her. He's very much abusing that relationship. He's essentially grooming her for his own uses, which, again, just speaks to the level of villainy that Slade has. But again, we say this all the time. It's not your fault, but it is your problem, in the sense that she is manipulated by him. She's groomed by him, which is absolutely not her fault. But what she chooses to end up doing with that, and how she expresses all of that, becomes her problem. And ultimately it becomes the problem of the Titans.
Yep, you got it. And I'm going to tie this back into the first issue and expand upon it a little bit. I know it was directly related to the whole sociopath, psychopath, antisocial. I'm going to broaden it to what previously used to be referenced as the cluster B personality system, which was narcissism, antisocial personality, borderline personality, and histrionic personality. The whole point of all of those is just the reactionary nature of those personalities, but also part of the reason why there's so many problems related to the traits in those personalities is because it's all for the sake of control. The person is often finding ways to get back control that either they sense that they've lost or they want more of than what they have now. And in Terra's case, I'm not trying to pigeonhole her into one of those per se. I'm just saying that it's relevant to the Deathstroke situation. No different than most of us, even if you don't have a diagnosed personality disorder. I'm really going to expand this. And you can do this for yourself. I'm not really asking for an official poll of this. Everybody listening to this right now, raise your hand if you think you can't get scammed. I suspect that I'm not Nostradamus here. I suspect that an overwhelming majority of people just raised their hands, because I would have been tempted to as well. And that is because it is our nature to think that we are above average when it comes to detecting flaws and detecting things that are untrue. there's unfortunate research. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble. There's unfortunate research that shows that we are below what our capabilities we think we are. I'm not saying that we're all bad at it. I'm saying that in general, your perception as to whether or not you can get scammed is not as good as you think it is. And honestly, when this has been put to the test, the people that are considered highly intelligent and have a high sense of self-worth are the people most likely to be scammed because they can't see their blind spot. So you take someone like Terra, who shows from a very young age, after having rejection by her father, that she is going to prove everyone wrong and is actually doing a very good job of showing what her value is to society. And you have someone who also considers his value to be very high, not to make this the Slate episode, but considers his value to be very high and diminishes intentionally the value of those around him, and finds someone that's incredibly useful in a utilitarian way, but is still comfortable enough with the idea of close, intimate emotion that he knows fully well that if he gets that one hook, he can use it for the rest of her life. Man, oh man, you got an interesting mix. You got a sugar daddy who basically is able to say, like, if you just do this here or there, we'll have a good life. And you have a woman who at this point is saying, like, well, he really is making a lot of sense, and I am getting some good stuff out of this. Even the people that are getting suckered, I'm still enjoying the good life. And yet, in reality, and I know it wasn't presented this way in the comic, my point with this is, if you have two people that are in a similar spectrum when it comes to their personalities like this, it just becomes its own. I know you love this term, Anthony, Ouroboros, where you don't know exactly at what point who is manipulating whom. The one difference, and you pointed it out, the one difference is there's usually a very definitive power alignment. And in his case, it's his age, experience, whatever you want to call it, resources, all that stuff. He has more of that than her. So by definition, he's the alpha. Okay, fine. If it weren't that, if they were both same age, similar experiences, all of that, this would be a constant tug of war. And there still is that. And ultimately, really did come to a head. But the fact that it took that long is only, in my opinion, because of that power difference. If it weren't that, I don't think it would have taken this long. I think it would have been a situation where she would have tried to just simply manipulate the Titans on her own, tried to separate from Deathstroke, then try and come up with her own plan to manipulate him to think that she was still on his side. Meanwhile, he's saying, okay, at some point, I think she's going to double cross me. What can I do for it? It's that type of back and forth. And to be honest, it's one of the rare times I'll say that the reality matches the fantasy. Many of these people, when they are in relationships with one another, you see some really horrific combinations of fights, of stories, and all sorts of other things. And the way I like to describe these situations is it's just emotional fishing. It's literally just people taking the most intense of experiences and feelings and colliding them with one another. And it just ends up spraying everywhere to everybody else that they come in contact with. And the only things you're trying to do is either you're trying to contain it or you're trying to hide from it. And if anybody is going through that right now, once again, I am not trying to put anybody on blast. I just want you to know, I'm not saying this in a pejorative way to make it sound like you're not worth listening to or you've done anything wrong. I just want to let you know that if you're going through this type of emotional situation, be it on your side or you're seeing it in someone else, please recognize that it doesn't have to always be that way. You may still have those moments once in a while, but they can get better and they can get less frequent. So I didn't want to make this sound like, as with so many times when we talk about personalities and trauma and things like that, it's not that we're saying it's going to be something that is just immediately resolved. And it is probably something that you're going to be dealing with for the rest of your life, but it definitely can have a positive motivational upward trend. And that's what me as a human being, let alone as a psychiatrist, really would want to see.
Very well said. And I think I really appreciate how you phrase that. I don't want to oversimplify it and say it's a silver lining kind of deal, but I do think it speaks to your personality and your outlook on life, that you're choosing to focus on that aspect of it, as opposed to some of the, dare I say, more obvious outcomes of that kind of manipulation, and the fact that you're choosing to key in on the potential there, I think is something that's ignored by a lot of people, frankly, in discourse, whether we see it, through victims of grooming and sex trafficking, or slightly less sexual, but no less destructive in terms of abusive parents and things of that nature, and children that are manipulated by caregivers or things of that nature, that the notion of potential for change and growth after the manipulation is not something I think that's discussed nearly often enough. We tend to focus on the trauma and how to address what happened, but not where they can go from here. So kudos to you for bringing that up. And I think there's a lot of fantastic food for thought for our audience on that kind of an issue. So we're going to take a quick break, plug our sponsor, BetterHelp, and a couple of shows. And when we get back, we'll get into treatment. Stay tuned. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? BetterHelp will assess your individual needs and match you with a licensed professional therapist. You can begin communicating within 48 hours.
It isn't a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional counseling done securely online. BetterHelp has a network of over 15,000 counselors with a broad range of expertise. You can log in and message your counselor anytime and get timely and thoughtful responses. You can also schedule regular video or phone sessions. No waiting room required.
BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if you feel you don't have a good connection. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial help is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit betterhelp.com/capes, that's better HELP, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional.
Special offer for Capes on the Couch fans. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/capes.
Hey everyone, you're invited to Harpy Hour! I'm Tracy.
I'm Liz.
I'm Steph.
We are the Harpies, and Harpy Hour is our new podcast featuring ridiculous stories in history, science, and entertainment.
Were you ever suspicious that pigeons were secretly spying on you?
How do you know who to eat first if you survive a shipwreck? Do problematic musicals send you into an uncontrollable rage?
If so, then Harpy Hour might be your new favorite podcast. That's HARPY for Harpy, and new episodes air every Tuesday wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can also find us on all social media at Harpy Hour Pod. And check us out on harpyhourpodcast.com.
Okay, bye!
Hi, I'm Saladin Ahmed, and this is Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So in-universe treatment, again, going with the theme of manipulation, Doc has come up with a kind of inventive, it's not a new therapy concept, but I think the application, given Terra's powers, are something of interesting outlier in terms of some of the things that we've done on this show. It's 144 episodes. We're constantly trying to come up with new ideas, and every treatment has to fit the person. So, Doc?
Yeah, so I am not a child psychiatrist by subspecialty, but I do have some experience with dealing with kids, and I have a kid of my own. But play therapy is something that doesn't come up as often in this podcast for obvious reasons. And yet, even though I'm not claiming that Terra at this point is a child, I do think that there is something to be said there, meaning the whole point of play therapy is recognizing that children may not have the same conversations that you have with a full-fledged adult, but that doesn't mean that they're not processing things deeply and motivationally in a way that a therapist can still have some huge impact. And therefore, you're trying to get to their level as to what's going on in their mind. Why am I relating this to Terra? Because playing with clay, playing with things that, as we have said, can be manipulated. But in this case, it's a free form. It's not something that's predetermined. You're not picking the path. You're observing what the person is doing and then trying to continue to extract more in terms of their mindset. So with someone like Terra manipulating the earth, okay, we can start with something minor like clay, but my thing is, let's go out to, barren wasteland. Let's go to an open field. Let's go somewhere relatively neutral and just say, you know what? As long as you don't hurt yourself, as long as you don't hurt me or anyone around, have at it. And let's see what happens. I don't know. And I know that may sound very naive, but my point is the reason clay is used is because it's inert. I mean, a child, unless, you somehow stupidly decide that you're just going to wait for it to harden into something and the kid throws it at you, like, you're not going to get hurt with clay, even if they're really upset. Silly putty, same thing. So yes, it would be a risk with Terra, but the whole point is, especially if I'm not a target, it allows for a lot more expression where she doesn't have the pressure that has also always been there, which is use this for something for someone else, or use this to fight someone. Yeah, it's much different compared to any other experience she's had. And I hope that she would take advantage of it properly.
That's a really interesting idea. And as the parent of a toddler myself, and as I announced last week, I got another one on the way, play therapy, or just the idea of play, is so vital to a child's development. And I think, frankly, it's something that we tend to ignore as adults. And I think it's because the school system doesn't allow enough play. It's something that really for a developing young mind is so vital. We tend to think of play as a distraction or a break from learning, but any halfway decent child psychologist will tell you, or parenting specialist or whomever tells you, play is learning. Play is where kids learn. And I see it with my son on a regular basis, on a daily basis, that with the way he plays with toys says so much about how he processes the world. And we lose so much of that as adults because it becomes work and responsibilities and the daily grind and things of that nature. And so just even the idea that we could have a chance to play and to be free to do something and to just create without any regard for harm or utility, I think is something that is overly hyped. And I say this as a utilitarian type person. Whether or not something is useful does not matter to its value. So I think play from a child's perspective is so incredibly vital. And we need play as adults. We need hobbies. We need creativity. We need those kinds of outlets, that it's not wasted time. It's not goofing off. It is vital to recharge our minds, our souls, our energy. And it gives us an opportunity and an outlet for expression that we don't otherwise have. And so I love the idea of giving her this open field and saying, create something, and using that and seeing what she creates would be fantastic. And, I think that is something that we can take stock of in our own lives, and being able to say, I want to create something. It's not necessarily going to have value, quote unquote. I'm not trying to make money off of it. I'm not trying to do it for any purpose other than it's something that I want to do. And it's something that I want to put out into the world. And hopefully it has some kind of value. This very show is essentially that. This podcast that you're listening to, yes, we have the Patreon and so on and so forth, but we're doing this because we love it and because it's fun and because the value comes not from the monetary contributions made by our patrons, although we're certainly appreciative of that. It comes from the discussions that we foster. It comes from the feedback that we get from our listeners, whether it's on our Facebook group or our Discord. I was just telling Doc beforehand, I got a message from a patron because of something that was discussed in the Discord. And every message like that we get, every tweet that we get for something like that just reinforces this notion of we're doing good with this. And whether this takes time away from my job or Doc's, I don't care. And neither does Doc, because we're making something good. We're making something beautiful and we're putting it out there. And this is therapeutic, not just because we're talking about mental health, but just the very act of this podcast is so refreshing and therapeutic for us. So, like I said, it's a roundabout way to say play and things that you're not doing necessarily because you have to are wonderful. And, the hiatus that we took for December kind of really helped reinforce that, and it just made me miss it. think I speak for Doc as well. We missed the interactions. We missed chatting with each other, and we just missed having you all listen to it. So yes, play therapy, or just the idea of play in general, is not just for therapy, and it's certainly not just for children or young adults. It's for everybody. Literally everybody should be playing at some point in your day. Take time, 20 minutes, do something. Do something that isn't going to make you money. Do something that isn't going to do anything except make you happy. Have fun.
Yeah.
I know it's a long-winded way,
but you didn't tell us how you really felt.
Fair enough. I have to stop beating around the bush and just get my point across better. So out of universe treatment, then clearly, I think you can just take away the earth manipulation. And what you're still left with is an individual that clearly needs a lot of assistance from the malignant narcissism, from the parental abuse, from the grooming, and potential sexual assault. There are a host of things that a real life analog to Terra would have to undergo. And so again, I don't know how much play therapy would come into that, but I think we've got deeper issues that having fun aren't real. That's not your first step, I would say.
Right. And to be honest with you, at this point, the person themselves probably would say, I get it. I should enjoy life more, but Doc, go F yourself. Like, be careful with just leading up to that. No, what I'm thinking in this situation, and yes, I was intentionally setting this up. If anybody was picking up the hints that I've been dropping this whole time, you have someone with the types of personality traits and emotional responses and low frustration tolerance, as well as the interpersonal conflicts. All of that stuff screams out dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, which is a form of CBT, which is my background for the most part. But I will say this, I don't have like a sub-certification in DBT, so I'm not going to pretend and say that I automatically enforce it, but I am familiar with it. And the idea is those areas that I just mentioned, you end up trying, if you can, to really focus on each of them one point at a time, because first you have to make the person aware of it. And I know this may sound strange to anyone that hasn't looked at it this way. Most people that are experiencing this aren't aware that this is actually what they're doing. And so making them just aware of these being these specific factors can be earth-shattering in a good way. I would say no pun intended, but people always think I intend the puns. So, but really, when you put words to emotions that they've been experiencing pretty much their whole life, or you almost sound like you're predicting what's about to happen when they discuss what the last argument they had was or whatever, it's really eye-opening for them. But in addition to that, you're basically getting to the point of what are the background beliefs that are really driving your actions? What are the steps you can take so that those actions are either different than they were before or more focused than they were before, so you don't just scattershot, have an impulsive behavior that makes things worse? And then also, how do you feel about those things when they're happening? In other words, don't let it get to the point that you're a stick of dynamite that blows up. But also, even while you're going through it, maybe have a better emotion than what you did before. Anxiety might be a little better than suicidality. Okay? Just to give an example. A little bit of sadness might be better than all-out rage where someone gets hurt. And I know I'm saying this for dramatic effect, but for people that are going through it, that's the truth. And so finding these pathways that are going to allow a person to navigate each moment when they happen, and hopefully developing the type of skill set that they're able to employ before the next crisis event happens, because there are going to be more crisis events. That's the other thing that I think I said in the previous episode too. I don't want to make it sound like when someone goes through these therapies, even though the therapies themselves may be finite, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden everything is eliminated that may lead to further emotional responses that are similar to the ones had before. This is an ongoing process that can always be revisited and can always get better. So in general, you look at these programs usually on anywhere, depending on if it's a integrated program where it's a, structured 3 days a week outpatient, or if it's one-on-one with a therapist, things like that. You're usually looking at, a few months of treatment with this in terms of the format. But that doesn't mean, for example, from the program you graduate, which is true, they call it a graduation, but it's not the type where you say, okay, now you are the absolute expert at all of this and do it this way and you'll be fine. There may be parts that you didn't do as well as you had hoped, but you didn't want to tell your therapist at the time because you just wanted to get through the darn thing. So that's something that I don't think I've ever actually said on this podcast. Don't worry about whether or not you got it right. Worry about if you're going to keep getting better. That's a big difference. I think sometimes when people are in therapy, there's this expectation that if I haven't figured it out by now, then clearly something is wrong. And not necessarily. It might just be that the situation itself doesn't lend itself to a quick fix. It may be that the therapists themselves had a different perspective than what you anticipated, and there wasn't an immediate match, but the match happened later. Or it could be that you were a great match and something else happened, COVID, that completely changed the dynamics of everything, and now you feel like you have to start over. Whatever it is, there's no such thing as it being all wrong. It doesn't have to all be thrown out. It just means that things have to change yet again, which creates the anxiety, I know, but it still leaves plenty of opportunity to just build on the things you already had before.
That was so well said and comprehensive. I'm not even going to attempt to add anything onto it, other than there were multiple things you said in there that I'm going to try and pull out for social media posts to just highlight, whether it's an audiogram or a quote or something like that. Follow us on Instagram. And so last week we had Jess doing Jessica Drew. This week we've got Erin from Girls Talk Comics, and she will be helping us get Terra on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Terra. I'm Dr. Issues.
Hi.
Okay. What brings you to...
What? Just because I greeted you with a smile and I'm happy makes you suspicious? You need to get over yourself.
Not at all. I just got thrown off because usually the people that seek my guidance are exactly the opposite, or more neutral. I should also inform you that I have several quirks that lead some people to think I'm reading more into what they're saying than I am.
But you're a psychiatrist. Your job is to read people. It's my job too, just for different reasons.
I see. Care to elaborate?
Nope. This is where you dig into what I really mean?
Like, sorry, you gave a clear answer, so if that's all, then...
Wait. What is this? You just give up on someone the second they show a little resistance? You're weird. Are you a loser? Are you fascinating? I don't know which.
So how will you find out? Hurl more insults? I mean, honestly, I haven't had someone so reactive in a bit. I'm chill, so you do you.
You're supposed to comfort me to calm me down, not be all passive aggressive. Are you sure you're a psychiatrist? What am I even doing here?
It's clear you have some trouble managing anger when you don't run the show. I'm trying to strike that balance. But the fulcrum on your conversations makes every sentence a catapult. Who does the best job navigating this out of anyone you know?
2 of them. And in different ways.
How so?
The first, if I talk about him, you're dead, so I won't. He was easy because he gave a job. Purpose. I did it perfectly. And he crushed our trust, so I crushed everything around me. The other, he's an animal. Any animal. Complete opposite. So much fun, I'd do anything for that boy.
To summarize, the first one is practical and the other one is whimsical. Well, that could be good. That means you have the potential to connect with a full spectrum of people. Perhaps blending a team.
No.
A support group.
Better.
I have to acknowledge that your reactivity may benefit from
People putting things in my body is what made me go crazy. Stop. No more.
I'm not going to yell back. I'm not forcing anything unless you demonstrate a danger. So please, let's keep this civil. Neither of us need to deal with damage to this office. My insurance company is going to drop me if I file one more claim like this.
I've had enough of this. You claim to be this super calm doctor and have all of my problems figured out, but you don't know a thing about me. You have a great life. You never had to build trust and break it and have it broken on you over and over again. You never got so enraged you basically killed yourself. You don't find the love of your life and have to throw yourself at them just to get a kiss. Tell me, how would you handle that? How would you be in my shoes?
I'm not going to say much, but there's some wrong things there. But anyway, to answer your question, I'd probably freak out a bit. I'd have intense emotions and I don't know how or when they'd overwhelm me. I mean, for all I know, I'd react similarly to you because I'm a living, breathing human and nobody deserves to be put through pain. But pain exists. I mean, channel it. Do something different. Otherwise, you're just going to spread pain to everyone else.
No! I'm out of here. You're lucky your office isn't a pile of rubble right now. Think about that.
5, 4, 3, 2.
And then next session, I'll talk about Deathstroke so he can kill you. Thursday afternoons work the best. Bye.
Once again, a big thank you to Erin from Girls Talk Comics. A fantastic job. As we said last week with Jess playing Jess, you can check out Girls Talk Comics wherever you find podcasts. They're at girlstalkcomics.fireside.fm. And we're going to have a link to their website and Discord server in the show notes. So go give them a follow, subscribe, like, all that good jazz, and show them some love. And we'll definitely be doing another crossover with them, I'm sure, at some point in the not too distant future. So wrapping up recommended reading, the key Terra story is Teen Titans, The Judas Contract. You know, if you want to get a better understanding of Terra before she reached that point, feel free to read. I mean, pretty much the whole Wolfman and Perez run is stellar stuff, but the Teen Titans, The Judas Contract, that's where the knife gets twisted. That's the big story. It's one of the most famous Teen Titans stories that they've got, and it is very obviously Terra-centric. So check that one out on DC Universe Infinite, or, go to your local comic shop and pick up a trade. Go pick up the floppies if you can find them. So upcoming episodes, Ben Grimm, The Thing, Alex Summers, aka Havoc, and Maya Lopez, Echo. So we got a good broad spectrum of characters to choose from. I'm legitimately really looking forward to Ben Grimm next week. That one's going to be a lot of fun. So as always, you can find all of our episodes on our website, capesonthecouch.com. We're on pretty much all the major podcatchers. And if you listen to us on a platform or a podcatcher that allows you to like, rate, and subscribe, like Apple Podcasts, now Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods, please leave us a rating and review, because that helps get us in front of more ears, more eyeballs, and the more people that see us and hear us, we can continue to spread that message. We were talking earlier, we're not doing this for money, but we are doing this to spread the word and spread the message. So tell your friends, tell, people that you love and care about. We're here. We're almost 4 years in at this point. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. And, check us out. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We've got a Discord, as I mentioned earlier, really great fan community, constantly growing, and, a good, safe place if you're in the mood or need to get things off of your chest. It's a good place to talk and to get some feedback from stuff. And our listeners and our fans certainly are aware and appreciative of that. So before we head out, Doc?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to act like this is groundbreaking material, but I think if we follow the proper biopsychosocial model for this particular patient, we should call it terraforming.
Oh, wow. I knew there was going to be a groundbreaking reference, but the terraforming, I think, is a nice touch. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.